"Be careful with that car, boy," sneered Margaret Ashford as she tossed her Bentley keys to the black valet at the Grand Meridian Hotel. "It's worth more than you'll make in 10 years. Marcus Sterling caught the keys with practiced ease, his expression remaining professionally neutral despite the insult. What Margaret didn't know was that she had just insulted the owner of the $500 million hotel empire she was staying in. Before starting the story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. The Grand Meridian Hotel stood like a golden monument to luxury on Fifth Avenue, its Art Deco facade gleaming in the late afternoon Manhattan sun. For 3 generations, the Sterling family had built their reputation on providing the world's elite with unparalleled service, exquisite accommodations, and the kind of discretion that allowed the powerful to conduct their affairs away from prying eyes. Marcus Sterling had inherited this empire at the age of 28 when his grandfather passed away, leaving him not just the Grand Meridian, but a chain of luxury hotels spanning 5 continents. At 31, Marcus was worth over $500 million and was considered one of the most successful young entrepreneurs in the hospitality industry. But Marcus had a problem that his wealth couldn't solve. He had never worked a day in the service industry that had made his family fortune. He understood spreadsheets, market projections, and international expansion strategies, but he had no idea what it actually felt like to serve the kind of demanding, entitled customers who kept his businesses profitable. That's why, 3 months ago, Marcus had made a decision that shocked his board of directors and horrified his personal assistant. He had decided to work undercover as a valet at his own hotel. "You want to do what?" his CFO, Patricia Chen, had asked when Marcus announced his plan during a quarterly review meeting. "I want to understand our business from the ground up," Marcus had explained. "I've spent 3 years running these hotels from boardrooms and corner offices. I need to know what our guests are really like, how our staff actually feels, and whether we're living up to the standards my grandfather set." "But sir," his general manager had protested, "you could just review employee surveys and customer feedback reports." Marcus had shaken his head. "Reports tell you what people think you want to hear. I want to know what people say and do when they think no one important is watching." So Marcus Sterling, heir to a hotel empire, had traded his Italian suits for a valet uniform and spent the last 3 months parking cars, carrying luggage, and serving people who treated him as if he were invisible, or worse, as if he were subhuman. The experience had been eye-opening in ways Marcus had never anticipated. Margaret Ashford represented everything Marcus had come to understand about a certain type of wealthy guest. At 55, she was the widow of a real estate mogul, possessed of enough money to buy whatever she wanted and enough arrogance to believe that money gave her the right to treat other people as if they were property she could rent by the hour. "Be careful with that car, boy," Margaret sneered as she tossed her Bentley Continental GT keys toward Marcus with deliberate casualness, forcing him to lunge forward to catch them before they hit the pavement. "It's worth more than you'll make in 10 years. Marcus caught the keys smoothly, his expression remaining professionally neutral despite the racial slur and the calculated insult. In 3 months of working as a valet, he had heard every variation of condescension, racism, and casual cruelty that wealthy people could devise. "Of course, ma'am," Marcus replied politely. "I'll take excellent care of your vehicle." Margaret looked him up and down with obvious distaste. "See that you do, and don't adjust the mirrors or the seat. I don't want to have to disinfect everything when I get back." As Margaret strutted toward the hotel entrance in her designer heels, Marcus carefully drove her Bentley to the secure parking area reserved for the hotel's most valuable guests. He had to admit, it was a beautiful car, though not nearly as beautiful as the Bugatti Chiron he kept in his private garage. The evening shift at the Grand Meridian was always the most challenging. It was when the hotel's wealthiest guests returned from their business meetings, shopping expeditions, and social events, usually in foul moods and looking for someone to blame for whatever had gone wrong during their day. Marcus had learned to recognize the different types of difficult guests during his 3 months undercover. There were the ones like Margaret Ashford, who used racial slurs and treated service staff like slaves. There were the ones who complained about everything in hopes of getting free upgrades or service. And there were the ones who simply ignored service staff entirely, as if they were automated machines rather than human beings. But tonight was different. Tonight, the Grand Meridian was hosting the annual charity gala for Manhattan Elite, an event that brought together some of the wealthiest and most powerful people in New York City. Marcus had originally planned to attend as himself, but his undercover experiment had given him a different idea. He wanted to see how these pillars of society behaved when they thought no one who mattered was watching. The answer, as it turned out, was badly. "I hope you washed your hands before touching my car," said oil executive Richard Barnes as he handed Marcus the keys to his McLaren. "I don't want to catch anything from people like you." "These people should be grateful we give them jobs," added his wife Sandra, loud enough for several other valets to hear. "Without us, they'd probably be on welfare or in prison." Marcus parked the McLaren next to Margaret Ashford's Bentley, making a mental note to review the hiring and training policies for the hospitality staff. If guests felt comfortable expressing such blatant racism in front of employees, it suggested either that the staff was too intimidated to report it, or that management wasn't taking such reports seriously. The evening's revelations continued as Marcus worked his way through a parade of luxury vehicles and their equally luxurious owners. Victoria Pemberton, heir to a pharmaceutical fortune, handed him her Ferrari keys with a sneer. "Don't you dare touch the interior," she barked. "I don't want your kind leaving fingerprints on my leather seats." Senator Patricia Williams walked past without acknowledging his existence, let alone leaving a tip, while loudly discussing her latest legislative initiative to reduce government dependency among certain populations. Tech entrepreneur Donald Mitchell made a show of counting his cash in front of Marcus before pointedly putting it back in his wallet. "Tips are earned, not given," he announced. "Maybe when you people learn to provide real service." Each insult was carefully catalogued in Marcus's memory. Each display of casual racism and economic superiority was noted for future reference. By the end of the evening, Marcus had compiled a comprehensive list of guests whose behavior was completely at odds with the values his grandfather had tried to instill in the Sterling Hotel brand. But the most revealing moment came when Margaret Ashford returned from the gala, clearly intoxicated and in an even fouler mood than when she had arrived. "You!" she shouted at Marcus as he approached with her car keys. "I know you people steal things. Empty your pockets!" Marcus looked around and realized that several other guests had stopped to watch the confrontation, their faces showing a mixture of curiosity and approval. No one seemed inclined to defend him or suggest that Margaret's demand was inappropriate. "Ma'am," Marcus said calmly, "I can assure you that all hotel property and guest belongings are completely secure." "Don't lie to me," Margaret shrieked. "I've been watching you all evening and I know your type. You probably took pictures of our cars so your criminal friends can come steal them later." The crowd of wealthy onlookers murmured their agreement. Several people pulled out their phones, apparently preparing to record what they expected would be Marcus's humiliation or arrest. "Search him," demanded Victoria Pemberton. "These people always have drugs or stolen property on them." "Call security," added Richard Barnes. "We can't have criminals working in a place like this." Marcus found himself surrounded by some of the wealthiest, most educated, most powerful people in America, all of whom were ready to assume his guilt based on nothing more than his race and his job title. That's when he decided the experiment was over. "Ladies and gentlemen," Marcus said, his voice carrying a new authority that made the crowd pause, "I appreciate your concern for hotel security. Perhaps we should discuss this matter with management." "Damn right we should," Margaret slurred. "I want this thief fired immediately." Marcus pulled out his phone and made a call. "Patricia, this is Marcus. Could you please come down to the front entrance immediately? And bring Jonathan and the senior staff with you." Margaret laughed drunkenly. "Oh, you think calling your supervisor is going to save you? You're about to be unemployed, boy." 5 minutes later, the hotel's senior management team emerged from the elevator, led by CFO Patricia Chen and General Manager Jonathan Hayes. Both were impeccably dressed and carried themselves with the authority of people accustomed to handling crises. but instead of approaching Margaret and the other guests, they walked directly to Marcus and stopped in a perfect line behind him. "Good evening, Mr. Sterling," Patricia Chen said formally. "How can we assist you?" The effect on the crowd was immediate and devastating. Margaret Ashford's drunken laughter died in her throat. Richard Barnes took an involuntary step backward. Victoria Pemberton's face went completely white. "Mr. Sterling?" Margaret whispered, her intoxication apparently evaporating instantly. Marcus straightened his valet uniform and looked around at the faces of the people who had spent the evening treating him like a criminal and subhuman. "Ladies and gentlemen," Marcus said calmly, "allow me to introduce myself properly. I am Marcus Sterling III, owner and CEO of Sterling Hotel Group. The Grand Meridian, where you've been staying, is one of my properties." The silence that followed was so complete that Marcus could hear the traffic on Fifth Avenue 3 stories below. "For the past 3 months," Marcus continued, "I've been working undercover as a valet at my own hotel to better understand the guest experience and evaluate our service standards. What I've discovered has been quite educational." Margaret Ashford looked like she was about to faint. "Mr. Sterling, there's been a misunderstanding." "Has there?" Marcus asked politely. "Because from where I'm standing, there's been no misunderstanding at all. You've been perfectly clear about your feelings regarding people like me." Victoria Pemberton tried to salvage the situation. "Mr. Sterling, surely you understand that we had no way of knowing who you were. If you had known, you would have treated me with basic human dignity," Marcus finished. "Ms. Pemberton, that says everything I need to know about your character." Richard Barnes stepped forward, his face flushed with embarrassment and anger. "This is entrapment! You deliberately deceived us!" Marcus nodded thoughtfully. "You're absolutely right, Mr. Barnes. I did deceive you. I pretended to be someone you felt comfortable insulting, demeaning, and treating as if they were less than human. What does that say about the kind of person you are when you think no one important is watching?" Senator Patricia Williams, who had maintained her political composure throughout the exchange, tried a different approach. "Mr. Sterling, I'm sure we can resolve this misunderstanding. Perhaps we could discuss this privately." "Senator Williams," Marcus replied, "you've spent the evening loudly discussing your political views about people you consider economically and socially inferior. I don't think there's anything to discuss privately that you haven't already made public." Marcus turned to address the entire group. "Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for participating in this educational experience. You've taught me something very valuable about the kind of guests my hotels attract and the kind of environment we've been creating." He paused, looking each of them in the eye. "Effective immediately, the Sterling Hotel Group will be implementing new policies regarding guest conduct. Any guest who treats our staff with disrespect, uses racial slurs, or engages in discriminatory behavior will be permanently banned from all our properties worldwide." Margaret Ashford found her voice. "You can't be serious. We're valued customers. We spend thousands of dollars here." Marcus smiled. "Ms. Ashford, you spend thousands of dollars, but that doesn't make you valuable. What makes guests valuable is treating our staff with dignity and representing the kind of clientele we want to be associated with. Based on tonight's behavior, none of you meet that standard." Patricia Chen stepped forward with a tablet. "Mr. Sterling, shall I process the immediate checkout for these guests?" "Please do," Marcus replied. "And Patricia, please ensure that their names are added to our exclusion list across all properties." The wealthy guests who had been so eager to humiliate a valet found themselves being escorted from the hotel by security, their belongings hastily packed, and their future reservations canceled. As the last of them departed, Marcus turned to his management team. "I want a full review of our guest services policies," he said, "and I want to implement a program where all management staff, including myself, spend time working in every department. We need to understand what our employees experience every day." Jonathan Hayes nodded. "Mr. Sterling, what should we do about the other guests who witnessed tonight's events?" Marcus considered this. "Send a message to all current guests explaining what happened and why. Make it clear that the Sterling Hotel Group stands behind our employees and expects all guests to treat our staff with respect. Any guest who has a problem with that policy is welcome to find accommodations elsewhere. 3 months later, Marcus Sterling was featured on the cover of Hospitality Management magazine as the CEO who worked undercover in his own hotel. The article detailed his 3-month experience as a valet and the revolutionary changes he had implemented based on what he learned. The most important lesson I learned, Marcus explained in the interview, is that you can't truly understand your business unless you understand what it feels like to be at every level of it. Spending 3 months as a valet taught me more about hospitality than 3 years in the boardroom. The Sterling Hotel Group's new policies became industry standard within a year. The Sterling Standard required all guests to sign a code of conduct agreement that explicitly prohibited discriminatory language or behavior toward staff. We discovered that when you eliminate guests who treat staff poorly, you create a better environment for everyone, Marcus told a conference of hotel executives. Our employee satisfaction scores increased by 40%, our staff turnover dropped by 60%, and our remaining guests report higher satisfaction levels because they're not surrounded by people behaving badly. Margaret Ashford, Richard Barnes, Victoria Pemberton, and the other guests from that evening found themselves blacklisted not just from Sterling Properties, but from several other luxury hotel chains that adopted similar policies. The hospitality industry is finally understanding that money doesn't give you the right to abuse service workers, said Patricia Chen, who was promoted to president of operations after helping implement the new standards. Marcus continued to work occasional shifts in various departments of his hotels, not undercover, but as a visible reminder that leadership meant understanding every aspect of the business. My grandfather built this company on the principle that luxury means treating everyone with dignity, Marcus reflected years later. I almost lost sight of that principle by staying in executive offices instead of seeing how our guests actually behaved toward our staff. The story of Marcus Sterling's undercover experiment became a case study in business schools worldwide, demonstrating how first-hand experience could drive organizational change and improve both employee satisfaction and business performance. The most dangerous assumption in business, Marcus would tell aspiring entrepreneurs, is that you understand your customers and your employees without actually experiencing what they experience. Sometimes the most valuable insights come from the places you least expect to find them. 5 years after that night at the Grand Meridian, Marcus received a letter from Margaret Ashford. It was a formal apology, written from a rehabilitation facility where she was receiving treatment for alcoholism and what she described as a lifetime of inherited prejudices. Mr. Sterling, she wrote, I want you to know that being confronted with my own behavior that night was the beginning of the most important change in my life. I had never seen myself clearly before, and what I saw was ugly. I'm working every day to become the kind of person who treats everyone with dignity, regardless of their position in life. Marcus wrote back, offering her support in her recovery and inviting her to visit one of his hotels when she felt ready, not as a customer demanding special treatment, but as someone learning to appreciate the hard work and dedication of people in service industries. Everyone deserves a second chance, Marcus told his staff when he shared Margaret's letter. But first chances matter too. How we treat people when we think no one important is watching reveals who we really are. The Sterling Hotel Group's motto became, "Every guest matters, every employee matters." It was displayed prominently in every lobby, not just as a marketing slogan, but as a genuine commitment to the principle that luxury hospitality meant creating an environment where everyone was treated with dignity. If this story touched your heart, remember that the way you treat service workers, waiters, valets, housekeepers, retail employees, and everyone else who serves you says everything about your character and nothing about theirs. The next time you interact with someone in a service position, remember that you have no idea who they might be, what their story is, or what they might be capable of achieving. Treat them with respect, not because they might be secretly important, but because they are human beings who deserve dignity regardless of their job title or circumstances. And remember that true luxury isn't about what you can afford to buy. It's about what you choose to do when you have the power to treat others well or poorly. The most expensive thing you can possess isn't a car or a hotel suite. It's the reputation that comes from always choosing kindness over cruelty, respect over arrogance, and understanding over prejudice. Because in the end, how you treat people when you think it doesn't matter is exactly what matters most. Thank you very much for listening. Please let us know what you think of this story in the comments. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any other videos.